Come again? You know I don't speak Spanish. In English, please. Huh? You pooped in the refrigerator.
Hello, Jedediah. Hello, Charlie. I didn't know we were speaking. Sure we're speaking, Jedediah. You're fired.
Sure. Pete, the personal rancor reflected in that remark I don't intend to dignify with comment. But I would like to address your general attitude of hopeless negativism.
Good. Well, drive carefully, because the life you saved might be your own. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sorry to bother you. I'm looking for Mrs. Lippman's family.
Could be bad.
It could be bad. It could be worse. And it could be even worse because it could be, hi Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are
the Cinemaniacs. And it is worse. Sorry.
Worst case scenario.
We show up. We show up. I think it's for them. But
so it's been a week or two more since we have been in this august organization's Halloween.
Well, it's June, not August.
Oh. Well, if we wait long enough, it'll be August.
It will be eventually.
And it'll be my birthday.
So we better take a deep breath, and because we have 10 to discuss today, I believe.
Some of us will discuss 10. Some of us may discuss 4.5.
That's possible.
First up, if I may.
You should.
Playing theatrically, locally at our Keene cinemas, and I think, frankly, your Keene cinemas too. Andy Samberg stars in a faux-umentary, a mockumentary, if you're lucky, a yockumentary, sort of spoofing the Justin Bieber type person, and it is entitled, cleverly enough, POPSTAR. So, yes, please, tell me.
Saw a trailer and intro to this months and months ago. It was not that trailer, but oh boy, I was partially dreading seeing this thing because it looked so in your face. It looked so like, oh, here's one of the new hot stars. I guess Samberg is a hot guy on, and I'm not sure if this character is from SNL.
No idea.
But the actor obviously is, and so here's a new pop guy trying to. It looks so much like for want of a better term, a ripoff of Spinal Tap. This is Spinal Tap, and so I have to admit, going into this with a chip on my shoulder initially, they start off with lots and lots of cameos, interviewing super pop stars and everything like that, and they have to tell us who they are. Well, if you have to tell us who they are with a little super, look, Snoop Dogg and musician, I don't find that terribly clever or. So for the first half hour, it really started out like I was not enjoying it. For some reason, about halfway through, it started kicking in. I started getting used to this character, how they ended up going, and I really ended up liking this movie, thinking it was pretty funny. I left thinking that Samberg is really sort of a more modernized and obviously younger Adam Sandler, who says the F word all the time he turns around. So I thought you could have cleaned this up. I think today's audiences, a lot of today's audiences, but people seem to either filmmakers think you have to throw a lot of bad language in there for it to be funny, or audiences think that's funny. I don't. And so you could have cleaned this up, made it PG-13 for me. I think it would have been even funnier. Some of Sandler's best stuff is PG-13. This isn't terribly clever, but there are enough characters that are pretty fun. Similar to Sandler. Sorry, Samberg, but I keep saying he's a lot like that. It has a moral to the story, and it's almost moments kind of touching where these three characters who've been split apart. It's about this pop star, these guys who create this boy band, and they break up, and so the lead singer decides to go off and on his own, and he's super successful one time, and then this next album is just a flop for many eventually pretty funny reasons. And so as you're following this is nothing new, nothing terribly clever, but if you haven't seen Spinal Tap in a while, And I can't really think of any other film that's really like that. I think people were afraid to mock Spinal Tap for quite a while.
Well,
And so this is
there was a movie called Fear of a Black Hat that was basically Spinal Tap for rap
Right.
music,
Okay.
which even ripped off Spinal Tap jokes.
Right.
And there was, I think Julie Brown did a spoof of Madonna's Truth or Dare movie. So there have been occasional films like that,
Right.
but none have come close to Spinal Tap and how just brilliant and accurate it was.
This is certainly not there, but eventually, even if you don't know the character or are familiar with Sandberg from SNL or whatever, as is the case for me, I think if you give this an opportunity and you're looking for sort of an enjoyable time, it's light enough that I ended up thinking that POPSTAR was pretty funny.
Cool. I missed it, so we'll just clarify that. What was the demographic breakdown on the audience you saw that with?
It was certainly younger. I'd say young or early 20s and under.
So this is for people to whom Spinal Tap might vaguely be.
They have no idea.
They may
What?
think it's a
Who?
medical
I
procedure,
don't wanna,
maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
right.
For them, this is a fresh concept,
Right.
And this is talking about their music, basically,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
pop culture they can identify with. So,
Right.
I was curious about this, but weather permitted me to not see it.
Okay. When it comes out on video, I will recommend it.
Sure,
That I think you might have a good time with it.
So, what was the next film on the list that
The
you saw?
next film, we get to see, haven't you been wondering what Megan Fox has been doing? And maybe Tyler Perry and Will Arnett? Well, all three of them are back. And they're going to have to either, you've got good guys and bad guys. Fox is one of the good guys. Strangely enough, Tyler Perry is one of the bad guys. And he's going to have to battle the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There might be two of them too, because they are kind of animated when they come out of the shadows. So a zillion different iterations of this. You've had the literal cartoon, you've had a couple of different movies, and then I forget when the first of these came out. It was a couple years ago.
2 or 3 years ago, yeah.
2 or 3 years ago. If you like the first one, you're going to like this one just as much. It starts right the heck up. No backstory or anything. Boom, we're in the middle of everything, so that's kind of fun. It's, for me, I'm not a big Turtles fan, and so this was okay. What I really enjoyed with this, Laura Linney plays an FBI agent, plays it very straight and comes in and is very serious. She's loads of fun. Tyler Perry is this bumbling mad scientist who is helping the bad guys to create this special concoction that's going to defeat the Turtles and make them all super powerful, the bad guys. And he's just hilarious. Strange casting, and I didn't expect him. He does 8 zillion of his own Medea movies every year, so I was surprised to see him in this. And he was really, really funny. So I can't recommend this really for if you're not already a fan of Turtles. You don't need to see the original. They're turtles who are ninjas and they fight bad guys. So there's no backstory you're really going to miss. But I think the demographic of this, the people who are really going to enjoy this are the ones who are fans. Certainly like the first one because it's just going to give you more of the sense of the first one, and lots of kind of funny in-jokes with really some good effects and good performances.
Mercifully, the weather got in the way of me seeing this. So,
you've had a good weekend then, thus far.
I had a fantastic weekend in terms of seeing movies, frankly, that I wanted to see.
Right.
Mix of age ranges in the theater when you saw this?
Yeah, strangely enough, and it was a pretty well attended. When did I see this? I saw this Saturday afternoon at the matinee, and so it was in the 2D. This was also in 3D, which again, if I have an opportunity, I try to avoid usually because I'm not crazy about the 3D. And also, if the screen isn't clear, it gets all kind of gummy and hard to see. But yeah, there weren't really young kids. I'd say the majority seemed to be like 8 to 12 and parents attending with that.
This is one of those where if you are a fan of the comic books in the 80s,
right,
you can actually have a pretty broad age range of people who care about this. So, which is exactly why these movies are being made, is because you have parents and take the kids, and that's double the ticket sales you can have. And maybe the kids want to see it again. I didn't want to see it once, and as I said,
you lucked out.
I was spared due to weather. Up next, speaking of turtles, here is a tale of love lost and found, of tender hearts and tender moments, a story of me before you.
I didn't know there was diving in it.
Oh, well then.
Yeah. It's Scuba diver. Love it.
That ups Tom's interest. Now up yours. I didn't see this movie.
I didn't either, unfortunately, but
boy,
I would really like to. No, I heard good things about it, talking to Kelly and the folks at Keene Cinemas, and they were all saying that they really liked it. And so I had saved this for last, and weather as well, but also had family visiting from out of town and couldn't get in to see it. So I feel negligent this week at least.
So we present that to you as informational,
yes,
as they say at city council meetings. And that is a public service to you at home to know that that movie exists and is playing locally at Keene Cinemas, at least until Friday.
Right.
Probably in Theater 6 thereafter. Of the films that I knew that I was supposed to watch this weekend,
yes,
that was the one I held out most hope for at not being stupid. And it looked like it's not a stupid film. So my recommendation is it's probably not stupid.
It's probably not. Now, whether or not this is stupid, we don't know. We'll have to find out.
We'll have to find out.
But
and I want to tease a little bit. I want to tease that I did see this one.
You are a tease.
I have seen the next two films.
Okay.
So I'm
excellent.
not total. For the first part of the show, just warming up the chair. Now you're gonna let loose the dogs of babblation.
So one of the ones we're talking about then.
Yes. Oh no, actually it's your turn.
I think it is my turn.
Oh, please.
See, he keeps jumping in. You got a bad guy who's trying to basically take over the entire world and the universe, and you got a bunch of good guys who want to stop him. That's what good guys do. But before you let them fight and everything like that, it'd usually be a good idea to introduce them and say, so that they know who they're fighting. And so one way you would do it you would say, X-Men, Apocalypse. Ouch. That hurts. My neck hurts. Wait a minute.
So here's the deal.
Yep.
They made a movie called X-Men back in the early 2000s, late 90s.
Okay.
Bryan Singer. I'm gonna give you a little information.
Okay.
You can sit in on this. You had 3 X-Men movies. The last one most people didn't like, and it sort of stalled things for a while.
Right.
And then they're like, we need to cast these younger and hotter and tell everybody how it all began. You didn't, but they did. And they made a really good movie.
Yeah.
They made X-Men First Class, which was quite good. And I was like, please give me more of these. And the wisdom was the first one was set in the 60s, and they're racing to get to the 80s because I don't know if you were aware of this, but the 80s was the greatest decade ever. Film history begins and ends in the 80s. All culture begins and ends in the 80s. And we desperately need to return to it, according to some people. I really wish they had done more of these. So Days of Future Past was set in the 70s. That was the second. That was a crossover between the younger versions of the X-Men and the X-Men from the original films as grown-ups. And then this film is set in the 80s.
Okay.
Thank God we finally got to the 80s.
So this must be great.
Well, if it's set in the 80s, what more do you need? There's a picture of Reagan on the wall, and you hear a song with a synth in it, and somebody has big hair. So who needs a story?
Must be.
I'm just sick of the 80s stuff. I lived through it. It was okay.
Yep.
It's not the greatest ever. I really wish they would have taken their time. I would have loved to have seen multiple films set in different eras.
Yeah.
But I feel like they're going to stall it in the 80s for a while and then move to the 90s, to which point, who cares about anything? So anyway, this is a follow-up to Days of Future Past. It is yet another... When you were giving the intro, I thought you were making a joke because you could have used that description for almost any superhero movie in the last 5 or 10 years. It's an end-of-the-world apocalypse story. It's taken from the comics. And you introduce a few more X-Men that most of which we knew as older versions in the original set of films.
Okay.
And they have to team up and fight the bad guy and his bad guy minions. And for me, it suffered from a sense of superhero movie fatigue and sameness. I just saw the last Avengers movie, which felt a lot like this, or Superman versus Batman, or I don't even remember. It just felt a lot like stuff I've seen a lot of recently. The movie itself is fine. The people in it are fine. The effects are really good. For me, the highlight is the scene with Quicksilver, the guy who can run really fast, where he goes and he saves a bunch of people from something that happens in the blink of an eye. And the way it's done is just brilliant and funny and clever and really creative and cool. But to me, that's the highlight of the movie. And there are other cool moments, but I find myself watching this and thinking about the other X-Men movies and saying, well, if this person is this age when they do this at this time, but we see that represented in the later movie and they're older, what's going on? And I thought they met this guy in this other place, and it was taking me out of the movie because I was confused with the timeline of this.
Well, to interject, please. That's what I was thinking Days of Future Past was either attempting to tie together or start over so that we could kind of start from scratch. Because my issue with... And to be a comic geek about that. My issue and problem with the end of Days of Future Past is everybody's back together, Phoenix is still alive, and my thought is, it's a lot like with when we had young Anakin Skywalker. It's like, it's Dark Phoenix, kill her now! Because isn't she going to immediately turn into that? I don't know. So I haven't seen this, I'm really looking forward to it, but it sounds like somewhere along the line the creators lost that thread of either new timeline or fixing the old one.
That's what I kept thinking about, and is kind of taking me out of the movie while I was watching this. And if you just come to this movie, like if you've only seen the first class, this new series, then it doesn't matter. It's if you've seen them all and retained any of it. I started thinking, well, was that the deal? Was the last film like a reset, like the first of the new Star Treks, where now they're going in a new direction? And if that's the case, cool. If not, I keep trying to do the math to work all this stuff out. There's some cameos from other people in the X-Men or Marvel people or famous people, which are interesting and cute and brief. It's entertaining. It's just, it's not as good as the one that came before.
I think we've been coming to expect, at least I have from the X-Men in particular, a different level of, well, I hate to say it, intelligent filmmaking. That it looks like maybe this one, the singer directed this one too,
yeah,
didn't
he came back and
he's usually pretty strong in that, so maybe you can't win them all.
And it has its statements about, you know, prejudice and the other and all this stuff, which I felt like they already dealt with really well in the first X-Men, and they do a lot of things that sort of tie into the second X-Men movie. So some of that for me felt repetitive. Like I feel like we've already covered this ground. And some of the, like Olivia Munn is in it as a character that's a pretty cool character, and she looks good, but she's barely in the movie. Like she barely says anything. So maybe they're setting her up for another movie. And the character they have to play Jean Grey, I thought was a little bland personally. So I don't know. It was entertaining. It was fine. It just, when superheroes movies are coming out every like 2-3 weeks, they have to be good to stand against each other, and this one's felt less than.
As you say, the last 4 or 5 we've seen seem to be dealing with the exact same topic.
Exactly.
They're just different characters.
And these movies they're like 2.5 hours. And I'm like, how about the movie's 80 minutes and they have to stop a runaway train? Okay, let's scale this crap way down, because End of the World, it seems silly, but End of the World gets boring after a while. When the stakes are gigantic, you always have to be, oh, you've never seen anything like this. It's okay.
I think we have.
How about somebody's trapped in a bank vault and they have to get him out? You know, make it like a, because I was, after the last, when Man of Steel came out, the Superman movie that wasn't that hot, I went back and I watched the first episode of the Superman serial from the 50s, 40s, and the first episode of the TV show. And back then, he was busting up mobsters, and he was stopping bank robberies, and it wasn't like every week was an End of the World, because after a while, that gets tiring.
Sure does.
Anyway, I'm up for more X-Men. I just hope that they're a bit better than this X-Men was.
Sounds like the X-Men police are coming to get you.
Go get them.
So.
Anyway, but yet more in theaters for us to discuss.
Only one, but
well,
maybe the best. Maybe we saved the best for last.
Maybe we have. So back again to the world of Wonderland with a lady that you know and love, maybe. Tim Burton produced, didn't direct this, an important distinction. We have Alice Through the Looking Glass.
It's a lemon too. It's the capital taste with the capital Q. Q-be-doo-be-doo. It's squash.
Yeah.
So.
Pile of crap.
Yeah.
Oops.
You gave it away. Moving on then.
Didn't bury the lead on that one.
No.
So I didn't really care for the first one much at all.
Nor did I.
I thought it looked terrible.
I'm a big Alice fan,
and
big Burton fan, big Depp fan.
Yeah, it was just...
First one was so over the top.
Yeah, it was just ridiculous and ugly to look at.
Yeah.
So I saw the trailer for this and I thought, well, I'm going to have to sit through this, but maybe the visuals will be good. And from the initial teaser, it looked like the visual would be amazing and I'd see it in 3D and that would at least be something. But man, it was just... I just didn't like it at all. I actually got up to leave. I was just hating this, and I'm like, this is just, I don't care. I mean, I aggressively was not connecting with this movie. The whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, I just don't, I'm saying almost out loud to myself, I don't care about any of this. This is just, I don't care. And finally I got up to leave, and I realized, as I got to the back of the theater, I realized, oh, there's probably only a minute or two left. I might as well see how it ends. So I just leaned there and put my glasses on and watched it, and I'm like, okay, yep, okay, great, yep, she's Wonder Woman, that's wonderful, and I left. It's not directed by Tim Burton. It's produced by Tim Burton, which doesn't mean a gigantic amount. It's felt like endless series of people, medium shots of people standing in front of green screen backgrounds that were popped in later. It was, I didn't find the visuals all that impressive. I mean, it's impressive that somebody could create those, but it didn't wow me in any way. It was just too much of everything. The performances were pretty grotesque and over the top. The Helena Bonham Carter Queen of Hearts was just grating and annoying. And we find out her backstory because everybody needs to have a backstory.
Didn't you wonder?
And I didn't care. and it's yet another film that tries to give us a strong female lead character by making all the men around her stupid or evil. And to me, that's lame and that's cheating.
Right.
What does that say to girls? If you want to excel in a male world, just surround yourself by people who are dumber than you, and you'll do okay. It's just stupid. So yeah, I really didn't like this movie, and probably would have and should have left a lot sooner than I did. During the film.
I didn't like the first one for all the reasons that you mentioned. That was way over the top. But going into this one, and again, trailers are not designed to be accurate representations of the film.
Butts in seats.
Right, absolutely. And so maybe this was my misreading, but when I went into this, I was looking forward to being entertained by visuals, and the visuals were almost like beating me over the head with how obtuse and unusual they were. So that didn't help me. I also went into this, and maybe this was my fault, but thinking that it had a real potential to take what is one of my favorite fantastical worlds, is the Alice in Wonderland, Wonderland, which is bizarre enough anyway, but make it really, truly dystopian. Find this bizarre world and then turn it dark and grim. And I was thinking they had a real opportunity with that, and they didn't. They just made it more annoying and obnoxious.
And it's a time travel story.
Yeah.
It's like a Back to the Future kind of thing, basically.
Yeah, so I just thought, and I tried to backpedal and think, okay, well that was my expectations. That's not what they're giving me, and I still didn't think it made a whole heck of a lot of sense. It seemed to be a style for style's sake, and not any real. I mean, I could see that Alice, they're trying to make Alice a real strong female character, but even with that, I thought she was kind of almost a little bit annoying. So I was not too crazy about this one either.
No,
sorry.
No, I mean there were people there.
Yeah.
I think they probably thought it was okay. And,
right.
and my criteria with what we do here is
but as
if they paid to see it and liked it, good for them.
As you've asked a couple of times just in this show, I'm trying to think who the audience is for this one, who the intended audience is. Because my mom, rest her soul, was a huge Alice fan. And I think she'd just be really offended at how unclever it is. That was one of the criteria for her and for us, and I think me, is that, if it's going to be something that we've seen before, do a twist, make it clever. Don't just make it annoying.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Sorry.
Eventually we'll talk about something we really like today.
Yes.
Might not be on the list of films to talk about, but we'll talk about something we like. So that's all that's currently at Keene Cinemas. We trust there will be new titles for you.
And believe it or not, we thank our friends at Keene Cinemas.
We do thank, they don't make them. We thank our friends at Keene Cinemas for that which we have discussed.
Yes.
And we go on to thank almost nobody in particular for the films that we're about to discuss now because, screw them. Up first, in the format of your choice and the viewing method of your choice, on the device of your choice, in the location of your choice, if you choose to do so,
keep at it.
It's my turn.
You want it or you want me to?
I might go ahead.
Good.
It's him.
So,
Hi.
cutting over to me. Here we go. Hi, back again. Tell me if you've heard this one before. The world's just about to be destroyed by a super powerful, overwhelming being, so you got to get some good guys who are going to stop all this from happening. Well, strangely enough, way the heck in the past, we didn't have mutants, we didn't have guys from Krypton or anything like that. You had just normal Joes who have to then team up with some other superpowered beings in your area. And besides the humans happening all around, you've got good guys and you've got bad guys, but they're all gods of Egypt.
The tower speaks and tells you what to do.
I'm sitting there and I hear those lines like, we mortals do it all the time, and thinking, that should be funny. Why isn't it funny? This one, and poor Gerard Butler, he gets, I like half of his stuff. I love half of his stuff. And then other ones like 300, I'm going to say 300 because this reminds me a lot of that. But 300 was like 100%. Or 300% CG, just standing in front of a green screen. This has quite a lot of that. It's not quite that much, but that's what I was worried about going into this. You going to show me something new? Nope. You going to show me something kind of even interesting? Not really. This was primarily a lot of CG that, and once again, I mean, how much can you really involve me with these characters from ages ago? And it's a new attempt at some old storyline, but I didn't see anything terribly clever with this. For me, again, this was another attempt at let's look at some really amazing, or try to make it amazing looking, character generated or computer generated action that for me didn't work. And so Gods of Egypt was not a big success in my opinion.
It wasn't a big success with anybody. Hi, how are you? I never know how much they can hear, but there's a lot of emergency
cable
vehicles
access.
going
What do you
past,
want?
So special effects. Our special effects
Yes.
happen outside. Whatever happens outside the windows, our special
You
effects.
didn't see his lips move then, did
No.
you? See, so.
So this was a movie that didn't do well at the box office. The director was really angry about how badly it was received critically, and I didn't particularly like it. And I love old Ray Harryhausen movies. I'm always hoping for something fun like that, like another Jason and the Argonauts, or even Clash of the Titans. Not the remake, but the early 1981 Clash of the Titans was a lot of fun. This is another Clash of the Titans in terms of the remake. It's CG worlds, it's shirtless dudes, it's swords, it's giant dragons and stuff. Again, not all of which would keep me from wanting to see a movie, but it just didn't seem to have any substance, and the funny lines weren't that funny, and the adventure wasn't that interesting to me. It was sort of CGI, for me, CGI overkill. I think if you're somebody who likes the new Clash of the Titans films, this might work for you. If you like the Mummy movies, the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies,
yeah, that's a good point.
This is sort of on that level. I mean, I think there is an audience for this. I just don't think it's me. And this was probably more for kids. I think kids would be less demanding and have less of a mental library to refer back to compare things to. So it is what it is. I thought it was kind of dumb and silly, and I didn't really care. And it was a lot of overkill.
Nothing super offensive about it if we're thinking about trying to rethink of it as a kind of a family flick.
I think this almost could be the modern equivalent of the old Sinbad movies, only in my head not as good as those. But, you know, I have standards, what can I say?
Right.
I'm not saying they're correct, they're just what my personal standards are. So up next, speaking of standards and a film that may or may not live up to them in terms of what I think, we have a film based on a novel by a literary giant. A film based on a book by a literary giant. What do you get? What do you get when you are in a time of regality and frugality and groovosity, and you get flesh-eating zombie hordes coming to knock on your door? Well, my friend, uncle, and stepson, you have Pride and Prejudice and zombies.
Open your disaster monitor. Your superheroes at the scene of the crime.
This reminded me of Hammer movies, not in a good way.
Yeah, not in a good
but
way.
It reminded me because it's half shot like a straight Jane Austen movie.
Yep.
So there is the regality and the frugality and the groovosity as that I spoke of.
Absolutely.
And the high button collar shirts and the nice stately estates and all that kind of stuff. And watching that made me yearn for the Hammer movies because they were so classily made and they were fun, junky horror movies. And I mean junky in terms of they're fun, they're bubblegum, they were great. I didn't care for this when I saw it in the theater. I'm actually struggling to remember if I walked out of this movie or not. I remember really not liking it because, again, when it got to the zombie and the martial arts aspects, because like martial arts is a big thing. It's part of the idea is that people's daughters are trained in the martial arts. They're sent off to various martial arts schools around the world so that they can help protect the family holdings via their foo skills. And the first time you see these girls practicing, they're all clad in black in a mostly unlit basement. And I'm like, oh, so you don't want me to see anything. So it was yet another one of those. It was all shaky camera garbage whenever there were zombie attacks or martial arts stuff. And that kind of turned me off. So I don't remember a lot about this other than not liking it.
Okay.
It made me want to watch Hammer movies instead, which I love. And yeah, I guess I'm not gonna fake it that I remember much about this movie because I might not have actually stayed to the end of it.
Okay. I went into this just dreading going to see this. I'm not a fan of the Jane Austen era or any of that stuff, all of the highfalutin costume dramas and everything like that. So I'm sick and tired of seeing zombies. Zombies are the big hit thing for like the past decade. Yeah. So I was like, oh God, no, please. And by about the first half hour into this won me over. And I think this was on my, this was last year's, I believe.
We never formally did best and worst.
That's right. We never actually did our best and worst. But this was sure going to be on my top 10 best because I really, really liked this. I couldn't believe when we reviewed this. We can go back and check the tapes. But I'm pretty sure that I mentioned that I couldn't believe a movie called Pride and Prejudice and Zombies had moments where I was almost brought to tears because the character strife works. You've got the lover of one of our lead characters, and he's sacrificing for her, and she's sacrificing for him.
You have a very strong cast in this movie. I will say that.
And performances were terrific. You have an interesting twist on these zombies because some of these zombies can turn whatever they want to, and so there's a lot of this kind of hiding within society, and you don't know who's who. And when they are zombies, they can talk and converse and explain things. So there's like this subclass. So there's social strata issues going on. I thought, okay, the action stuff, you're right. That and it's at the moment we had that scene in the basement, I was thinking, oh, Mark's going to love this one. And
All
you're
I
right.
ask is to be able to see what's going on.
But you're right about it. Camera's moving around,
request.
it's blocked by poles and stuff.
Yeah.
So the action stuff doesn't work all that terribly well. Boy, I thought the rest of it was loads and loads of fun. And of the movies last year, I really ended up liking Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. I hate to say it. Sorry, folks, but
I'm glad you did.
Really liked it.
I'm honestly glad you did. So speaking of movies you liked.
Yes, we could go on. And the fashion world. The fashion world is being taken over by gods and superpowered people. No, it's not. No, it's not. But there are problems with the fashion world. People are trying to take it over. Maybe somebody that we've seen before from jail. You'll have to find that out. Because Hansel is back. And Zoolander is too.
So they do the whole job themselves, from the catching to the canning.
So I was never crazy about the first Zoolander.
Yes.
I think Stiller stuff is hit and miss. Wilson in particular is hit and miss for me. He's been in a few that I just, the Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, and maybe it's the direction and certainly the material, but Zissou was brilliant. I loved the Internship. So I'm less offended by him, I guess, but I went into this with some trepidation. I went back to watch Zoolander because thinking, oh, I needed backstory. You certainly don't.
Oh, so it was fresh in your mind before you saw this?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
And I actually ended up liking the original Zoolander a little bit better, but it's something like if we're going to flash back to POPSTAR, and there's Sandberg there and Sandler's stuff, just in a good way, the stupid characters. Just characters that are you kidding me? That guy can't possibly exist. He's such a moron. That Zoolander 2 won me over real rapidly. And I thought pretty much throughout, there's a bit with Justin Bieber in there, and everybody hates Justin Bieber, and they're making fun of him as Justin Bieber as a secret agent. And I just thought, you see lots of cameo stars and cameo situations and things like that, until we get to Will Ferrell, who we saw at the end as kind of the ultimate bad guy, and that picks up from the first movie. And usually I like Ferrell. I know you're not crazy about him. I thought he was the weakest part of this. I thought the vast majority of Zoolander 2, particularly if you like the first one, I think you're really going to like this one. I thought it was really pretty funny.
I speak for the trees, but also for people who have not seen the first movie.
Yes.
I never wanted to see the first one. It just looked lame to me. It looked, I don't know, I like all kinds of stuff.
But it's the struggle you do for the show.
It is. And more often than not, I am pleasantly surprised, and that fills my heart with joy. Sometimes dawn, sometimes comet, but mostly joy. I have a beef with comedies that are like aggressively over the top. Like it's funny because we're trying too hard comedies, and that's what I always thought Zoolander would be. This was that to a degree. It was cleverer than I expected it to be. It was more nuts than I thought it would be. Like it gets into almost fantasy or sci-fi at times. It was just chock full of nuts. Both.
Okay.
Sometimes it was so over the top I was eye rolling, and sometimes it was like, wow, I didn't expect that. And that's what I want in a movie, is to see something I've never seen before, or for it just to not be predictable. So I was okay with this for the most part. I still wouldn't say I loved it. It was better than I expected, let's put it that way. But I still feel like a lot of the Zoolander character's performance is just so outrageously over the top, stupid. It's like, come on, a human being couldn't function like that.
That's stupid.
But there were some things that made me laugh aloud, and some cameos that were pretty amusing. And yeah, this was better than I expected. Okay. I would say if you have never seen the first Zoolander and for some reason you were going to just watch this, you don't miss much. They do it really. They do what I always wish films would do, rather than retell half a story or remake a movie, or let's get another Spider-Man so we finally understand how he got bit by a spider. They had a series of news clips at the beginning of the thing.
I thought that was funny.
Quickly brings you up to speed if you don't remember the details, or if you've never seen the previous one, and inside 5 minutes you're good to go. You hit the ground running. So that was really nicely done. Yeah, I thought Zoolander 2 was okay,
Okay.
but I don't know that I would tell anybody to go see it. So
Well, there you go.
Goldfinger. Up next,
Goldfinger. I tell people to go see Goldfinger.
I would tell people to go see Goldfinger.
Yeah.
Widely regarded as the best Bond film. A good starting point. Up next, speaking of Bond films were set in both the Europe.
Thunderball was filmed in the water.
Thunderball was filmed in the water and took place partly in America. Also taking place in the water in America is our next film. What do you do when you are a Coast Guard guy in the 40s, 50s, somewhere in there? Certainly not the 60s. Unfortunately, not the 80s. In the Massachusetts Bay Area, and there's a ship that's in trouble. Well, you strap on your boots and your galoshes and your water wings. You hop in that little skiffy boat, and you go on out and you show them the finest hours.
Masher has a bear trap, spring-loaded catapult, and battering ram.
So this was a very tense and effective maritime thriller, let's say. If you've seen The Perfect Storm or something like that, this is reminiscent of that. I don't think it was quite as good as that, but this really happened, and these guys did some amazing things, and it's just a survival tale, and it is. I didn't think it was great, but I thought it was pretty edge of your seat for the most part.
Right. I left, going in knowing that this is a true story, so I'm kind of like, oh, okay, great. What are they going to do with it? What I was struck with ultimately was Pine and Affleck's performances. I thought were just really, really solid. I'm really starting to respect Casey Affleck as the real strong actor within that family. And I love Pine from Star Trek and a lot of his other stuff, and he was very good with this. Yeah, I thought this was an interesting story about human courage and human endeavor. We've seen it before, but if you haven't seen The Perfect Storm in a few years, I think it's perfectly much worth a watch.
Cool.
I liked it quite a bit.
Up next.
And moving on quickly, because we are kind of running out of time, a story about a young woman who finds herself lost and trapped in a whole bunch of forested area. And something seems to be after her or following her. Is it really just in her mind, or is she going nuts? Is something really going to get her? Because she turns out to be a girl in woods.
He lives on the moon. We may all be there soon. And he gets around with a jet.
So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time here. What I was struck with was this takes a little while to get going, and so the very beginning and the very end are kind of methodical, kind of predictable. But boy, the stuff in the middle where she's out in the woods, or in woods, I guess, trying to survive whatever may or may not be going on. There's some really interesting photography, really interesting visuals. They play with depth real nicely. I thought this looked really fine. Overall performances were pretty solid. So as a surprising where'd this come from, I thought Girl in Woods was really quite effective.
Cool. I wanted to see it, but weather kept me away.
Once again.
So that's all we have this week. We hope you'll join us next week for a less breathless discussion of a bunch of stuff we don't know what it'll be yet. Until then, I'm Mark.
And I'm Tom.
And we are
the Cinemaniacs.